Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah Amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Fazkuruni azkurkum washkuru li wa la takfurun. Sadaqallahul azim. We begin any gathering with the praise of the Almighty One, the Creator, our Lord, the most gracious One, the most merciful One, the owner of everything, the source of peace, the controller, the remover of difficulties, the truthful One, the wise One. And we send peace and salutations upon the greatest creation of all, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we send peace and blessings upon the Ahlul Bayt, the Sahaba, the Tabi'in, the Taba Tabi'in, the Awliya, the pious and the righteous. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with them all. Now, they say it's always good to begin with some kind of story so people stay interested. So it's a story from the olden times that there was a king, and this king gathered a lot of people around, and what the king did was get some real diamonds and get some fake diamonds and effectively put them in one kind of bowl. And the people that were gathered in that court before the king, he said to them that you will have to tell me which are the real ones, i.e. the real diamonds, and which are the fake ones, i.e. they are just worthless stones. And if you are able to do that, you will be handsomely rewarded. And also what the king said was that if you pick the wrong ones, or let's say you don't even want to make that decision, then he was going to take your necks off basically. And plenty of people in that had a go, and a lot of people lost their necks. And then a blind person came along, and he goes to the king, I will tell you which ones are real and which ones are not. And the king thought to himself, if the ones with full eyesight could not tell, how will this blind person be able to distinguish what is the real diamond within these stones and what are the fake ones? And so the king was even intrigued as to how this was going to happen. And so this blind man here, he goes to the king, give me 10 minutes and I'll be back. So he took the stones and he went outside and he sat in the sun. He then came back in and said to the king, here are the real ones and here are the fake ones. And he was absolutely right. Now, everyone wondered in that court, how did he get it right? Here is a blind man. We had full eyesight, no issues with our eyesight. He has no eyesight, and yet he could do something we could not do. Not a trick question. Does anyone know how he did it? Come on, Huzaifah, you're looking a bit perplexed.
He relied upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
MashaAllah, that's like a textbook answer, isn't it? 10 marks out of 10. No, that's not the one. He may very well have done, but, again, one has to do some kind of practical element as well sometimes, Just like, I'm sure Hamza's got some exams coming up, and he can rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but ultimately he's still got to revise. He's still got to turn up to the exam. He's still got to fill in his name on the paper and do the question, as he said in that regard. I'm sure even if he wrote on his exams, I'm relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though he goes to an Islamic school, they ain't going to give him marks just for that. You see, what this blind man did was, when he was asked by the king, how did he do it? He said it was simple. He goes, he put them all out in the sun, and the real diamonds, they never got hot, and the fake ones, whatever stone they were made, or plastic, or whatever they may have been, they became hot, and the real ones stayed cool. And so really, just from that story, we have to think, look, the real stones stayed cool, the fake ones got very warm in that regard. And if you apply that to our life somehow, whatever kind of heat, trial, calamity, tribulation, whatever you want to call it, we get in life, really Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing us to see which of us are the real deal and which are not. who's got the fake Nikes on and who's got the real ones on. You know, we might have a very expensive, I don't know, watch or a top or whatever it is these days that the kids do nowadays. I think it was fake t-shirts and whatnot. But really Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to see who is really sincere and who is not. Who merely actually just talks the talk and who actually walks the walk. And really what you have to think is that trial, that test, that scenario is going to come for you. You can't avoid it. Often we are always praying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us peace, give us things. And in reality, most people think that means not to have any tests in life. I.e. they are never tested in this dunya whatsoever. But really, that's not really what they should, the meaning of that. So if you know that the trial and test is going to come, then prepare yourself for it. You can't avoid it. If you are praying with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for no tests in this life, then, Allah wa'alam, you may get a bigger test in the grave or even on the day of judgment, as he said, because this is the testing ground. It's not the grave necessarily the testing ground, this is the real testing ground. Because whatever you do in this life will determine your abode in the grave and really your standing on the day of judgment. And really we have to think also within that, I've just come back from Pakistan, as he said, and often we say Pakistan is a poor country, and there is some real poverty there. But sometimes even ourselves and even people in places like Pakistan have to ask, do I get 3 meals a day? Or if you eat 2 meals a day, or whatever that may be, do I get sufficient food? Another question we have to ask ourselves is, if we did not work for 6 months in this country, would we be able to survive? And really, all these kind of things should really come to us. Where have we come from? What was my hal maybe 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago? And where am I now, as he said? And it's easy, as he said, to get lost in looking at what we have now, not necessarily where we came from, and always looking to the next step. We've got a 2-3 bedroom house, we want a 4 or 5 bedroom house. But hold on, maybe 5 years ago, you were, sharing with your younger 2 brothers or something. And really, I think modern day age, as he said, is that many kids I don't think have seen poverty. They may slightly now, maybe in this scenario, start seeing the parents slightly holding back on things. But generally, I think most children of the current generation have always got what they want. And, I'm probably showing my age, but I can tell you, like I said, in our house, only if a guest came around was the Coke bottle open, and only after that were we allowed to drink it, because it had been opened. Otherwise, unless it was Eid or a very special occasion, it was never opened. And that happened even with a packet of biscuits. In their days, not many people ate actually English. It was the Pakistani KCB type biscuits. But again, same scenario. Only if a guest came around, the packet was open. Then we knew once it was open, the parents knew it was going to go off, so we were allowed to, share in that. And, even on clothes, this idea that we just go and willy-willy buy clothes, it was unheard of. You generally buy it on Eid, as you said, and a lot of people were poor then. If you're on benefits in them days, they used to give you vouchers in summer holidays. I don't know if they still do that. And you'd go and get your uniforms and a bit of extra clothes with them kind of thing. But you see, I compare that era to today and think, are we actually more content now? We might have more material wealth, but are we any more content than we were then? And really, again, coming back to this idea of a test, the test will come. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not made a night when the day will not follow after that. If the night comes, you guarantee the day will come. And so what you then have to think is, whatever difficult period we're in, however grave we might think it is in that regard, that difficult period will pass. It's not going to remain forever. We have the Quranic ayat which says, with hardship will come ease. We see in that moment, in that particular test that we may be in, whatever situation applies in our life, but be it if we're 10 years old, 15 years old, 20, 30, 40, whatever, everyone's got a different kind of, something going on in their life. Know that difficult period will pass. So now you're in this difficult period, one has to think ourselves, what do I do? How do I cope in this difficult period? What should my actions, reactions be in this? And like I said, you can do it in two ways, reality-wise. You can take this difficult period in your stride and deal with it appropriately. Of course you're going to struggle. Everyone can give you the best advice you can, but you will struggle in that difficult period because it wouldn't be difficult otherwise. Or you can kick up a fuss while it's going through this difficult period and think, why me? Why does it keep happening to me? Only this happened last month or last year. I thought this problem had gone away, etc., etc. Why me? Why not somebody else? He doesn't seem to get any problems, And then what we do is we make this task even more difficult. So we're already going to go through this kind of difficult period or a difficult test, and yet really we make it harder on ourselves because of our attitude towards it, our conduct towards it. We're more bothered about why this test has come, why this scenario has suddenly come, than actually dealing with it or thinking, well, I am where I am now. As you said, yeah, of course, sometimes one can reflect on their actions. It may be a certain action may have led you to a particular situation, but again, that is how we get tested, I'm afraid. We are going to make mistakes in life which are going to lead to another situation. Of course, we don't want to make these mistakes, and we'll try our hardest, but guaranteed you will make mistakes which will put you in predicaments which you didn't expect or didn't want to or had no intention, but you find yourself in that situation. And what you're doing is just constantly thinking, I shouldn't have done this, maybe if I'd done this, maybe if I'd done that, etc., etc. And ultimately, as you said, really, why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala testing me in this situation? And you can speak to a lot of businessmen, and they'll always, again, I'm not singling anyone out or any kind of thing, but generally businessmen are always mostly complaining about the situation. Work is never, it's a bit down, it's never this, it's never that. If you ever talk to a businessman, ask them, are they ever actually content? Yes, business is great, alhamdulillah, I'm doing this, I'm doing that kind of thing. No, they're always on the negative mostly, They may have had good times they may be going through a difficult period, but they forget them good times, and it's all about why has this bad period come, almost like anything or everything that we do, be it in terms of work, business, deals, it should be guaranteed profit in that regard. And really, again, giving the example to everyone, look at the free oxygen that we always consume. We don't pay for it. If we merely had to pay for that, we'd all be bankrupt. But it's just a small thing we take for granted. And again, there was another story where, I can't remember the name of the sheikh, he was some kind of big sheikh in the olden days. He went to the masjid and he was praying, and obviously you leave your shoes outside here like you do, and he come out and somebody had taken his shoes. Now Allahu Alam whether they stole them or took them by accident, as he said. And even this sheikh thought, I'm a big sheikh of the time, what will people say when I walk the streets barefooted? That look, such a sheikh, look, he's walking barefooted in the street. They won't know the reality, that he's had his shoes stolen or mislaid or anything in that regard. But even this sheikh, then this thought passed through him, and as soon as he left the masjid, he then sees somebody who's got no feet, no legs as such, and immediately the sheikh went into sujood, and he thought, here I am thinking, what are people going to think of me because I'm wearing no shoes, I'm barefooted, and there is somebody who's got no feet whatsoever. He's not thinking, what shoes have I got or not? And so immediately he really fell into sujood to do shukr. Why? Because yes, he realized he doesn't have shoes, but when he saw somebody who was less well off in terms of they'd had no feet, he immediately realized how beneficial the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were. Yes, his shoes went momentarily, he will go and get some shoes. Just like if we walk out of here today and our shoes are gone, Jamil, if your shoes are gone, you might worry slightly, but the reality is, you're going to be able to walk home or drive home anyway. Your socks might get wet or whatever, but the fact is, we've all got extra shoes at home. We aren't in a position where we're going to say, that was my only pair of shoes and they've gone, I can't even afford to buy anymore. And so really, it's at this point when we do real shukr, when we look at people who are less well off than us, because only then do we count the actual blessings that we got. When we're looking at somebody on the other side who's got, a better car, better job, better house, etc., where's our real shukr? It's almost like there is no shukr, and we're almost desiring what they want, as he said. But when you compare yourself to somebody who doesn't have as much as you, then this is the point you should be doing, alhamdulillah, I am actually blessed. But again, our thought and mindset is, looking at the person above us. Of course, we should have drive and motivation in life to do well, but really it's not the maqsad of life that constantly we're doing that, because really, where is the shukr? When do we actually do shukr? Is it when we might actually lose one leg or something that we do shukr? Or, for example, that we can't go to the toilet for whatever reason? Is that when we're going to do shukr of the organs Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us? Because, ask the person who can't, voluntarily or naturally go to the toilet like we do. They will be, doing real shukr when they had that time in that regard. And really, so when you actually focus on that real shukr, the real deep-seated shukr that you'll feel, and it's at that point then, you're really, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will start blessing you with even more, because you're doing the actual shukr. Otherwise, we raise our hand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, thank you for everything we got. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that, in that regard. There'll be 58 demands after the one line of shukr. And really, as he said, there's no even in the current climate, as he said, we might all be struggling. But the fact is, as he said, I'll just compare myself to someone, going past it. The price of gas goes up there. They have no, comfort zone in that regard. They don't have massive amounts of disposable income in that regard. And yet, we, as he said, we are struggling, and we're saying, oh my God, the bills have gone up, 200, 300% in that regard. But again, if we compare ourselves to probably the vast majority of the world, alhamdulillah, we've been blessed. And often, those who do go to Pakistan, you'll probably see there, even people said it to me, oh, alhamdulillah, you've got no problems, you're in England. And their automatic assumption is, if you have money, that's it, everything's sorted, especially in England, because it grows on trees as such. But, I've said to them, look, the more money you have, the reality is the more problems you can have, because the more money you have, the more desires you have. As you said, you earn that first, let's say, the first time you ever work, you get one wage, alhamdulillah, you're happy, but then, you want the second wage and the third wage, and before you do, you start kind of spending in your mind, okay, I'm going to save and work for the next 6 months because I want this or I want that, as you said, in that regard. And even when we come back to the difficulty point, often even that event or circumstance that we think is difficulty, it's not really difficult, it's probably in our heads, oh my God, this is a difficult situation, how am I going to deal with it? So really, there might be a small bit of testing there in for us, where we kind of multiply that, because in our head, it's, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to solve this? How did I end up here? I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done that. It's his fault, it's her fault, it's my wife's fault, it's my husband's fault. He didn't listen, had he listened, or she had listened, we wouldn't be here, etc., etc. So really, if you think about it, the difficulty might be small, but you've made it, as they say, a mountain out of a molehill in your head. And therefore, you make that almost hurdle in your head even higher to jump, to solve the issue or deal with that properly. And often, is that difficulty actually a difficulty? If you strip ourselves back to it, what are our actual needs these days? We're saying to people are having to cut back these days, but often I hear is, oh, well, I can't actually cut back on anything because everything seems to be a necessity. Everything seems to be a need these days. Is Wi-Fi a necessity? Modern day would probably say it is a necessity, isn't it? But the reality is we can live without it. I see in Pakistan, people haven't got a gas stove, they're still burning, wood, but they've got a mobile phone, it's topped up, they're watching TikTok. And all these other things, a mobile is a necessity. It's not a necessity because we live without mobiles in my age. Nobody died, it's like, oh my God, if every child doesn't have a mobile phone, what happens if he's coming from school, he can't contact me, or or vice versa, and all these kind of things. Well, hold on, didn't dunya exist before mobile phones? We as kids survived. Dunya still, existed without in that regard. Likewise with cars, again, it's commonplace. As he said, every household to have 2, 3, 4, 5 cars, every person. But again, is it a necessity in our current timing, as he said in that regard? So you come back to that point. People who are trying to cut back, is Netflix a necessity all of a sudden? So we're almost thinking that's why in our head people saying, "Oh, we can't cut back. We're struggling because everything's becoming a necessity." So when the bills are going up by £200-300 a month, we're thinking, well, we don't have that £200-300 because it's a necessity to eat out once, twice a week. It's a necessity to go out shopping to Trafford Centre. It's a necessity to have the latest mobile phone, etc., etc. It's a necessity to have Netflix, Amazon Prime, blah blah blah, all these kind of things. So again, in our hand, everything we've made, it's almost a necessity. Hence, when a difficulty comes, in our head we think there's no way we can do anything in that regard. And really, if you look at COVID, for the majority of people, what happened was, they were sat at home. Many people lost their job, and really, whether you're rich or poor, really, what were your basic needs then? Food and shelter, wasn't it? When we were told to sit at home, what was it? Just food and shelter, wasn't it? And that's all it was. He said those were the actual needs in that regard. So just, really in terms of conclusion, doing that real shukr, we have to get to that state by looking at those who are less blessed than us. Because it's only then you actually, as I said, you actually appreciate each and every single blessing you've got in your life. It may be a car, it may be a better car than the next person. And maybe you got a slightly better house, as you said, in that regard. And it's maybe, like I said, brothers will only learn this by maybe travelling to poorer countries and seeing it for themselves. Because as he said, in the current climate, we are far from where we see these pictures on the TV and even the Turkey earthquake, but can we actually relate to it? Imagine if that happened to us, what would our reactions be? There we are thinking, let's save for another big house or a big car, and whatever you had is gone, collapsed in the middle of the night. Your TV that was hanging on the wall, gone. Your laptop gone. Probably your mobile phone went as well. Everything went. And so, really, as you said, do that shukr and look at that test that has come in your life and deal with it first in your mind. How am I going to deal with it? Don't, as you said, amplify the problem in your mind. You make it so much that you make the issue as hard, twice as hard to deal with. And resile yourself in the fact that this period was always going to come for me. Often, like I said, we go back to that mindset. If I had not done this, if I'd done this, it wouldn't have been like this. As you said, we get into that mind flex. Of course, that's probably right, but the fact is, how else is a test ever going to come in your life, as you said? Those who are parents, as you said, and they're crying about my kid is not doing this or my kid is doing that. Well, where else are your tests going to come from? If it's not from your partner, it's going to be from your kids. Your neighbour's not going to test you that much, or your colleagues at work. They'll test you slightly, but frankly, that's where your tests come from. And this concept that, we should almost be disappointed or somehow angry that a test has come. Really, as he said, we really need to just recheck that intention, because you have to remember this is the testing phase. Dunya is the testing phase for you. This is one lifelong full test with loads of small tests and big tests in that regard, in the hope that we all pass that final exam. And so really just, one should correct that mindset as to how to deal with these issues. And as you said, if you suffer, as you said, for us, mostly it's a financial loss, which hurts us the most. When we're hurt in the pocket, that's when we learn, as you said, in that regard. But just as you said, think, I am still blessed to be in this country. We all have food, we have shelter, we have more than the basic necessities in life. And so you should just really, reflect on that. If I've said anything wrong, the mistakes are mine, and all goodness comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.